Chapter 10. Grief and Surviving the First Year. Understanding why you are messed up doesn't stop you from being messed up. Dr. Bezel van der Kolk. I remember saying to my husband, what on earth did we do with our days before Emma arrived? We thought we had a fulfilling life before she entered our world, but we had no idea of the love that was to fill our hearts. No one can describe what happens at the birth of a child. You suddenly feel whole as a person and a couple. You both look at each other with your eyes saying, look what we made. She's a little bit of me and she's a little bit of you. The feeling is almost euphoric. But when that life ends, the closeness you felt as a couple seems to be a million miles away. Before leaving the hospital that day that Emma died, I was handed a pamphlet about grief by the hospital social worker, an A4 piece of paper with words on it. That was going to get me through for the rest of my life. Excuse my sarcasm, but it was like sending you home with a band-aid on an open surgical wound on your head. There was so much wrong about the whole situation. We are not dealing with a cut finger here. We were two young, traumatised parents trying to understand the enormity of what had just happened to us. The social worker isn't to blame. That was what was available at that time, 32 years ago. I want to change that now. Why? Because what I know now about grief, trauma, the brain, and our emotions could have saved years of silence and internal torment. My mind can only wonder how the mothers and fathers managed in the First and Second World Wars when their sons never returned home. In fact, I can be so bold and answer that question myself. They didn't. All I know is that their pain has been passed down through generations. It is no wonder many drank themselves into oblivion to stop the hurt or committed suicide. The question is, how can you heal if you don't know the beast you are dealing with or someone to guide you through? This is a trauma. Trauma wasn't even a thing until 20 years ago, let alone considered a factor in a person's health. I can only thank the doctors who have made it their life's work to find out more about the human condition, such as Dr. Bruce Perry and Dr. Bezel van der Kolk. I feel a sadness in my heart when I think of my dad's mum, who also experienced the loss of her two children and what she went through. Her second son Alex died of silent pneumonia in his sleep when he was 3 years old, and her youngest son, my uncle Danny, took his life at 23 years of age. She was in and out of hospital over the years with depression. When I visited Scotland, my Auntie Peggy, my dad's sister, took me to see her at the hospital. Growing up in Dunedin, I had only seen 2 photos of my grandmother, one when she was a young girl and one of her in Mum and Dad's wedding photo. When I visited her, what I saw shook me to the core. She was incredibly agitated and was surrounded by dribbling, doped-up patients, and there was this peculiar smell that permeated the room. I wanted to leave. I thought I was going to throw up. I was not prepared for this at all. It was so confronting for a young 20-year-old. So when I was feeling all over the place with my emotions, I was too scared to tell anyone for fear I would end up in the same predicament. I would rather just exist than end up in an institution such as that. In the words of trauma researcher and author Dr. Bezel van der Kolk, he says, being traumatised is not just an issue of being stuck in the past. It is just as much of a problem of not being fully alive in the present. Describing how grief, your trauma, changes you. A dear friend asked me one day, many years later, how would you describe losing your child? What effect does it have on you? I sat there and thought about that question for a few seconds. I really couldn't put it into 1 or 2 words because you cannot erase from your mind what has happened. So I use this analogy. Have you had sex? Do you enjoy it? Now, I want you to imagine your life before you had sex or made love. Just try. Can you? Now, could you explain to someone who hasn't had sex what it is like so that they could imagine walking in your shoes to feel what you feel? It's tricky, isn't it? Why? Because it is a mental, emotional, and physical change in your whole body, not just part of you. It is all of you. All of you is affected. You are moved by the sight of the person, the touch of the person, the smell of the person, the firmness of their butt or the softness of their breasts, the taste of their lips, the sound of their breath changing from anticipation, the closeness of your bodies against each other, the thoughts you are thinking of what you're about to feel and enjoy, and the arousal in your loins, that soon you will be carried away with the enjoyment and intensity of the act, then reaching orgasm. All of your senses are involved. It is life-changing. So can you think of your life beforehand of not knowing the feeling of sex? You can't. You can't go back and imagine it being otherwise, can you? Validation and understanding. My wish for you is that from this day forward, you never feel alone again or feel as if there is something wrong with you. Anything on the following list is a normal reaction for what you are going through. Feeling depressed. If you start feeling suicidal, tell someone you can trust straight away or contact your doctor. If you have started planning your suicide, you need to ring 111 for New Zealand or go to the emergency department immediately. See the back of my book for different health agencies and helplines. You will feel shock, denial, be numb, depressed, anger, sadness and guilt. Dismissing it happened. You know it, but you won't accept it. Resentment, loneliness. There's no one to talk to who understands the same pain. Foggy brain, no motivation, feeling utter exhaustion for months. Nightmares, different scenarios playing out through your mind, but each nightmare ending the same way: your loved one has been taken, killed, or is lost. Feeling distant from friends and family, receiving judgment and criticism from others. You are told that you shouldn't be feeling this way, you should be over it, or you should have moved on by now, or you need to pray harder. Torturing yourself with the what ifs, wearing black all the time, you just want to stay hidden. Feeling anxious about being on your own, socially withdrawn, looking and feeling dishevelled, feeling completely hopeless. Blame of self or others. Play depressing music, not to feel better, but to feel worse. Fear of visiting hospitals or funeral homes. Drinking excessively. Screaming. You start swearing, cussing constantly, which you never did previously. You want to hide under the bed covers and never come out. To get out of bed in the morning, you just have to make yourself do it, because if you thought about it, you would never get up. You feel as if your partner does not understand your pain. You wonder if your relationship with your partner will survive. You fight or withdraw from your partner. Your dreams have been shattered. You feel despondent. Scared you would bump into someone who doesn't know that your child has died and hear the dreaded question, "How are you? How's your, you know what I mean." Feeling anxious when attending parties, dinners, weddings and other special events, or trying to avoid attending these events. Trying to be happy when you feel so sad. Fear of being put into a psychiatric unit for disclosing what you are honestly feeling. You want to die and can't see how things would ever be better again. Triggers. Hearing people use your child's name. Hearing babies cry at the supermarket. Hearing songs that remind you of your loved one. anniversaries of any kind that intensify your sadness, your child's birthday, walking past their bedroom and they're not there, visiting your child's gravesite, or it could have the opposite effect. There is no right or wrong way. It is messy, but it is normal. You are dealing with a trauma. As Dr. Bezel van der Kolk explains, trauma robs you of the feeling that you are in charge of yourself. So this is a time to be kind and compassionate to yourself. You must give yourself permission to treat yourself with compassion. Your body and mind are in shock. See Part 2, Brain and Trauma. Don't expect too much of yourself. Your body and mind are trying to make sense of your new world. Try this on for size. Imagine if you have just been told that your friend has been in a severe car accident. The impact was such that they needed to be cut from the wreckage, they barely escaped with their life, every bone in their body was broken, and they have a severe head injury. They have been put into an induced coma and will spend a minimum of 6 months in the hospital before they can go home, and will require further outpatient follow-ups and medical care and surgery. Would you expect them to be the same person physically or mentally that they were before the accident? Or would you tell them to stop having a pity party because they couldn't do the things they could before the accident? No, of course you wouldn't. You need people around you that can support you and have your back, that will encourage you to speak freely about how you feel. I want you to go crazy and write your own kind of messy on the next page. If all you can muster up right now is a scribble or a 4-letter word, just do it. Just let it out.